Wow. I mean, have you seen a quicker Super Sunday in terms of what's happened out there at the Ferocious Kotla? I woke up slightly late this morning thinking to myself, yeah, it's going to be Labuschagne and Head probably batting till the time I wake up. But I was completely wrong because Australia Harakiri out there. 9 wickets that they lost in that first session, eventually consigning them to a defeat. 6 wicket win by India. And what that does is, of course, make India retain the Border Gavaskar trophy. I'm Avnish Hegde watching this day 3 review. Yes, 3 days again. I don't know why we play 5 days of Test cricket, because if pitches are going to be like this, it's going to be fun and entertaining. And so is this show. So subscribe, get involved, and of course, let us know in the comments what you want us to talk about, because we have, of course, a few surprises in the show. We're going to be welcoming a man back from, of course, something which we'll tell you about. And enough of me now, but as you can see, look at the score, 263 playing 262 and that 113. No one would have thought about it. It was the anti-climax and no one really wanted from a neutral perspective, but there you go. India, of course, doing the job by 6 wickets, like I said, and go to Indore an absolute high, 2-0 and too good. And with that, let me introduce the guests who are also too good. We have an absolute jam-packed session right now in terms of crazy Nick, Somesh Agarwal, and of course Sanket Sangal as well. Let's get their insights, but of course subscribe first and foremost. I have to start with Somesh, who returns to our screens after a good marriage, Som, but it can't get better than this Super Sunday, can it?
Yeah, I mean, what else do you want than Sunday evening free to spend with your wife? At least she's happy.
At least she's happy. How happy are you? Were you seeing this at all? 61 for 1 at Stumps last night. Everyone was talking about how Australia have themselves in the driver's seat, but it wasn't a beat. Jadeja had a different script altogether.
Yeah, I mean, actually, in my mind, Australia were favorites going to this day, and I was actually already looking at 1-1, to be very honest. And I think 50 more runs, and this could have been a way closer test match. But I'm just thinking of what is the best one line to summarize what happened. It has to be either Australia swept themselves out of the Delhi test, or once India got head, the tail followed suit. So
I mean, I like those two. I was trying to conjure something up in my mind, maybe capital punishment because it's Kotla and all of that. Nix, what did you make of it? I mean, Jadeja having an absolute laugh, as Ravi Shastri said, spit for nothing. I mean, 7 for 42, really?
Yeah, firstly, it's very good to share the screen with Sanket, Somesh, and you. Been a while. Yes, I think Australia were just too lost in their minds. It is impossible to. I mean, it just you can't. I mean, Pujara said it rightly at the end of the match that you can't play sweeps here so much, knowing how the ball is going to do. It is the first shot that you will probably want to avoid. Use the straight bat more than as opposed to going horizontal bat shot. It's just Australia, I think it's something we discussed yesterday. When you have pre-plans and you're just wanting to stick to it for just, I'll not do anything else. I said this in when Khwaja swept and reverse swept that it will not come off. Khwaja had immense amount of luck in the first 30, 40 minutes itself to tell you that the day it starts to spin more, it will not get easier. I don't think Australia adapted to that and they didn't have any other option. And you see how KS Virat batted, how Virat looked again good before he got stumped. There was a way to get runs here. I just don't know why Australia never found that way out.
Let's see if Sanket can make sense of that. Because look, from an Australian perspective, you're scratching your head even as a fan because they batted 31 overs in the first innings, 32 in the second, and you don't expect that. Especially like Nix was alluding to in the morning session, it's so key because you get a little bit more bite and purchase. And Australia, of course, shambles out there. What do you put it down to? Because once they go back to the drawing board today, Sanket, there'll be lots of questions to be asked. Is it personnel? Is it just the mentality? What is it?
I do think that ultimately, I think the quality of the Indian bowling just got to Australia. I just think whatever happened in the last test, I think the last test they tried to play conventionally, they tried to play classical test cricket, and I think they batted well. Like I think the partnership between Smith and Labuschagne was like almost flawless, and it was said to be one of the best sessions of batting by an overseas pair against some extremely relentless bowling. But the end result was getting bowled out for 177 because they didn't have enough runs on the board. They was going at less than 3 runs an over, and eventually the bowling was just too good and eventually got to you. So this time around, they just went in with a radically different approach. They thought that they're just going to play baseball and just going to just just hit the hell out of the opposition, and it worked to an extent in the first innings. Uh, got to a decent total. I think you can, and I think in the context of what has happened in the test, I think you could probably say that it was even an above par total, and that if India had a semi-normal tail, like not had a test centurion, like five-time test centurion batting at number 9, then Australia might well have got a sizable lead in the first innings. But so it was a good total, and it did come off in the first innings. Just that when you're facing bowlers of this quality, ultimately it's not going to come off every time. And
Hmm.
it did start well yesterday, so I think it was understandable why they continued with the same approach, and it felt like maybe another 40-50 runs, like that partnership between Head and Marnus had maybe just carried on till like the partnership, like or lead was over 100. Then I think India would have been under real pressure, because anything over 200 on this deck would have been quite difficult to chase on, and I think then it would have been India would have been doing the catching up. So I think
Hmm.
the logic made sense, but ultimately I think it comes down to the shot selection, because batting aggressively as an approach is fine, but that doesn't mean that if you only go to shot when you're under pressure is the sweep shot, then you're not going to succeed against bowlers who are this accurate, because Jadeja and Ashwin, they both bowl at the stumps. They're super accurate. So eventually, if you're going to try four sweeps in an over, you're probably going to miss one anyways. So
Yeah.
it just came down to, I think, ultimately a lack of skill set, because uh, they don't really have a lot of range, like other than Steve Smith and maybe Manas, and to a lesser extent Hanscom as well. Hanscom, I think, showed batted conventionally in the first innings as well, and actually batted quite well. He was probably a little bit unlucky here this time around, got out to the first mistake that he made. But other than Hanscom, and Smith, I think I think Ashwin has probably gotten into his head the way he's been batting in this test. And Manas, I think, again got out, off the back foot, like misjudging the length against Jadeja, just like he got out in the second innings of the last test. So other than these three, I think the batting is like lacks the basic skill set to succeed in these conditions. Like they
Yeah,
just
I mean,
be
gonna
outclassed.
be there's gonna be lots made of it. As you can see the stats in the ticker below. I mean, there was collapse since that cold day in Headingley in 1961. That was what 62 years ago. And Australia lost 4 wickets in 11 balls at 95 3. Then of course, all the stats is there. You can see. So is a 4-0 brewing around the corner, because I think Mark was said it on comms. Sri Lanka can do New Zealand 2-0, and if India beat Australia 4-0, which is looking likely right now, it's a whole different ball game in the Oval in June.
Yeah, I mean, see, after the first test, I thought 4-0 is likely, but somehow how this test went, right? I still feel Australia were pretty damn close in this test, to be honest. I mean, I still think that they can actually take a test out of the remaining two. At least they should be believing it. But yeah, I mean, uh, possibly 4-0, but like I said, Australia can still win one. I mean, it's very bizarre. I mean, in my opinion, their second innings in this test is even worse than their second innings in the last test,
Hmm.
which in itself was very bizarre. Uh, Again, I mean, I was just thinking when they were getting out to sweeps that the somewhere near the average of the total sweeps attempted by both sides is the ideal number of sweeps in these conditions. Like India do not attempt any, Australia just do it on every second ball. So I think थोड़ा balance अगर बनाए तो that is the right amount of sweep needed. I still feel see. I'm loving the way Labuschagne is batting. Something that I mean, he never fails, right? He never gives you an impression of a batter who doesn't know what he's doing. He gets out because facing Ashwin and Jadeja in these conditions is perhaps the hardest challenge in world cricket at the moment, and hardest challenge there has been in world cricket since there has been cricket. So I think Australia can take heart out of that. Even if they can take a test out of the remaining two, they should be reasonably happy. But other than that, I think don't know what other hope Australia has.
Okay. Guys, keep your comments coming through. Subodh Chavan going on to say, I think BCCI should give KL Rahul next test match for farewell and should say that we moved on from him. Vikram Mohan.
Yeah, I just want to press up on the topic of KL Rahul. I mean, I understand, and it'd be fair if he's dropped for the remaining two tests. But then that means that he won't be playing in the WTC final as well, unless and until there are other injuries, which I feel would be tad unfair. because looking at what he did when India were in England last time around, and also against South Africa in that first test, I think at this point of time I trust him more than uh, others, Gill, Mayank, or whoever it is, to succeed in that one-off test in England. So even if he loses his spot in the remaining two tests, I don't know if there can be an arrangement made where he still is the incumbent opener in English conditions.
Do you agree, Nix? Because Subodh, of course, is making his presence felt in the comments below with comments like these, as you can see. But just jokes apart, though, KL Rahul, we keep going back to this point, oh, longer rope and what not. But how do you assess it from now? Do you agree with Som?
Yeah, I do. I think he's got that right. And maybe the thing is, after this, he can't complain that he did not get a long rope. So the longer rope may end up being like a suffocating one that maybe he shouldn't have got it. But then it's always better to give somebody a bit more chances than a few less. So then you don't have any regrets that you did not give them enough chances. So agree with Som on the point also that he did look good enough in England, and he gave himself time as well, which is why India had the results that they had in their previous tour. So with that in mind, he gets the next two tests and the WTC final if India get there, which they should ideally. And I think today also it was very unfortunate. I don't think you can put it down to anything other than maybe tough luck. And you get this kind of dismissals when you're not informed. When you are, something just weirdly happens and you find ways to get out. So the only positive, like clutching to straws, is he's getting starts. Just hopefully whenever he gets to that next 20-30 something, he's ensuring that he doesn't lose his concentration or play any bad shot and just gets through that phase once. I'm sure the day he does that once, he'll get into that hang of consistently getting those scores back.
Okay. So here's one for you, and then I'll of course come to Sanket about some plaguing Australian issues. So both once again being pretty animated, and he goes on to ask you how impressive is Rohit Sharma's captaincy in the first two tests? Because look, it's not very often that he's captain India in tests with all his injuries and all that. I know he did in Sri Lanka. I mean, against Sri Lanka at home last year. But so far, how do you assess him and his tactical calls in both the test matches so far? So.
See, I mean, it's again, I mean, with bowlers like Ashwin and Jadeja in your 11, who have been playing for India like way before even Kohli became the Test captain. So it's a easy job at the moment, especially with how Australia are batting and how Ashwin has had the thing over Steve Smith. But other than that, I think he himself mentioned that he's taken a leaf out of Kohli's book of how to just keep the pressure on even when the wickets are not falling, which is rare. I mean, wickets are falling all the time. So, I mean, I feel Aksar has been slightly underbowled at times in the first innings. I felt that. But other than that, I think I think he's not been challenged enough to answer this question with complete honesty, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think just to add, I think today was the right day. Given how Australia started yesterday, had again began the way he did today, and then India had lost out, say, probably 100 or 120 lead already with Head still batting with Manas, then I think the pressure would have been on Rohit to really get his maybe pacer back or do a try Akshar Patel. The fact that Head got out very up top, they just set the tone for India to then keep the control on Australia.
It begs the question then, Sanket, about Australia and what they're going to do, at least to pull things back, consolation win here or there, because they don't want to whitewash, let's face it. They made two changes from Nagpur to Delhi. How many are they going to make from Delhi to Indore? Sanket?
Yeah. So regarding the changes, I think I really don't think that they've tried pretty much all the options they have. So I think the only thing that they can hope for is Mitchell Stark and Cameron Green returning to full fitness. So assuming that those two are back, I think David Warner will vacate his place. Like, he's probably not going to be fit anyways, but even if he was fit, I think Travis Head will get a run as an opener now after what he did in the second innings. So I think that's a no-brainer. Travis Head as an opener and Cameron Green replacing David Warner in the batting lineup. So basically, Hanscom at 5, Green at 6, and Mitchell Stark will come in for Matthew Kuhlman, I guess, because playing three spinners hasn't really worked. So I think I would assume that they would go back to two quicks and two spinners, and
But
I don't think Matthew Koeman did enough in this test to unseat Todd Murphy. I think he looked clearly the better of the two, and obviously took wickets in the last test as well. So I think it's a pretty straightforward call as far as selection is concerned. Like even though Australia have lost like both the tests quite heavily, but there's not much that they can do on the selection front other than bringing back the injured players. There are no magic solutions on the bench. Like the players that they have picked in the first couple of test matches, apart from the ones who are injured, are the best that we have got. So you know, there's no other. I think whatever post mortem is to be done is to be done after the series, because the next series will be the Ashes in England, which will be in completely different conditions to this. So I think the post mortem can wait till that.
Okay. Australia, of course, will have a slight breather, of course, going into that third test, which starts on the 1st of March. So there is quite some time for them to just go back to the drawing board and reassess. Another question on Rohit, then I'll throw this to the, of course, Rohit fans in the house with Nix and Som here. His batting. Everyone kind of gives him some slack about the fitness. We make jokes saying, yeah, where's his next water power around the corner? And all of the stupid things that we say with Rohit Sharma. But when he really needs to deliver, he does, especially in home tests. So, I mean, talk to me about his 120 in Nagpur, and not to forget his impact with the bat in this test as well.
yeah, I mean, the best part about his innings in Nagpur, his century against England in Chennai, I mean, he just looks a class apart from all the other 21 batters in that game. I mean, he just
But
makes
why
it look
is
so
that?
easy. I mean, because of his, I mean, it's the kind of shots that he plays. They don't look manufactured. They just naturally flow from his bat. And the best part about him playing spin in tests has been his footwork. It's so decisive. I mean, even the commentators mentioned that unlike some other players, when he walks, comes down the track, it's mostly to attack and not just to defend. So, and ultimately it gives him runs. He scores at a brisk pace, and with the way these tests are, they proceed. I think runs is the ultimate. I mean, there is no value in playing time in these conditions, and that is what sets Rohit apart. If you look at other players, especially in the Indian lineup, KL, Pujara, and even Kohli to an extent before this test, they sort of play for time. Their first 60, 70 balls, they are at 14, 15, 20, but not Rohit. And this is where, and even when Rishabh Pant plays, he plays the attacking brand of cricket, and that's what works, because here, I mean, every other ball has your name written on it. And to my mind, I mean, the way Rohit is batting, he can easily play Test cricket for the next 3-4 years and continue to lead the side. But I was just thinking this morning that either of Ashwin and Jadeja are clearly front runners to be the man of the series in this series so far. But I mean, just on the basis of how difficult it is to score runs, I think Rohit should be right up there as well. And based on how the last two tests goes, and him being the captain and whatnot, maybe he should be there in contention for the player of the series as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask Nix if just is a Mumbai thing, the fact that he's grown up on these spin pitches, of course. What is it? Because, like Storm touched upon, the fact that he dances down the wicket with such nonchalance and hits bowlers to areas which normally other batsmen wouldn't even think about. We saw it in the second innings where he's taken the attack to Lion, right, before Pujara ran him out quite bizarrely. Just on Rohit Sharma, Nix, what sets him apart? Som just spoke about it there. But it's the mindset, it's the skill and the will, which other Indian batsmen kind of lack, right, in one way or the other.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the clarity of mind, which I think when he plays the shorter formats, you'd love to see Rohit bat the way like he has today in the shorter
Yeah.
formats, where he's using his feet so much to spin, get into the pitcher ball and playing clean shots. Of course, the fields are going to be in that sense that they will not allow him to do that. But in test matches, I think it's that clarity that this is how I want to play, and you can sense that with some when Rohit is in that zone, that you see everything going how he wants him to be. If it's
Correct.
coming down, if it's not there, as we also heard on there, that the first instinct is to attack and then find a way to not get out, and just pad it out, or just be in a zone, be in the zone of safety. So I think it's that clear mindset and the ability to again use his feet. We've seen also use his feet a lot in the last two tests, not as much to attack though, as much to just pat the ball away or in a defensive, type kind of mind. So I think that is what is something that is clearly visible with Rohit, that is enjoying batting in terms of the clarity that he has, and nothing much is troubling him. Apart, see, good ball will definitely get people out, but it's just the mindset. I feel the clarity that he has, that is, just helping him get the runs up top, and he's just setting the tone for India in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, it begs the question: is Rohit Sharma the best Test match opener in the world right now? We've seen so many different sort of ilks. Craig Brathwaite comes to mind. Karuratne, some would say Elgar, but they're not really Rohit-esque, right? So,
At this moment, I think Rohit is the best test opener. He's made runs in England. Now he's making runs on these dust balls. So dominating swing and seam movement, dominating spin. The only thing that now he needs to do is just get a couple of hundreds when India are in Australia, and I mean this question will then answer itself.
Or just do it in the WTC final. That's all.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the important thing, and lots of fans, of course, backing you guys indeed. There's a couple of more questions we'll take before we wrap up this day 3 review. I say day 3 review, I mean, it's quite ridiculous how the game meanders so quickly at times. Pranav Anand, Greg K, good to see you in the comments. Keep your comments coming through and subscribe to our channel because there's lots of content coming through that way. I have to talk about, go on. So
I was just, before we take a question from one of our viewers, I just wanted to ask Sanket this. He mentioned dropping Kunman for Stark. I was just thinking, is it, I mean, practical to just have 3 off spinners? In the interest of having more options, wouldn't it be better if Stark replaces Todd Murphy, because Australia will play ahead and they have Lyon, so there are 2 off spinners, and Kunman at least gives them that left arm angle, because India has whole host of righties, right? What do you think, Sanket?
I don't think like Travis Head's bowling. I don't think will be factored in the team selection. Like they they obviously picked him in this test for his bowling. Like that's what was explained. Like when Tony Doderman came out to explain team selections, he said that Travis Head was picked because they wanted an extra bowling option. But I think I don't think that is going to determine who the frontline spinner is going to be. So if they went in with Lyon and Murphy in the first test with 2 off spinners, then I don't see why that shouldn't happen again just because you have a part-time off spinner now. And
No, but in the just for having that left armer variety, because against India, against the
I
righties,
don't
it has worked.
because we saw both of them bowl in this test, and I think Todd Murphy troubled the right-handers a lot more than Matthew Kuhneman. Like, and even the last test, I think he outbowled Nathan Lyon. And I still believe that if Australia playing only one spinner, I would play Murphy over Lyon. I still maintain that. Like Lyon, I think for me, if Lyon hadn't performed in this test, then I think there is a possibility that I would be in favor of dropping him for Kuhneman and going in with Stark for Lyon. But I think he's done just enough. Like he obviously performed well in this test, so I think he's done enough to retain his spot for the rest of the series. I'm still not sure if he would be my first choice spinner in the Ashes if I were to play one. But for now, I think I also think that now the series is gone, so Australia have to look for the future as well. The series is gone, so who's going to be your number one spinner going forward? I don't think Koeman is going to be an option outside of the subcontinental conditions. He's very much, I think, a bowler who probably needs helpful conditions, whereas Todd Murphy is more in the Graham Swan kind of mold, someone I believe can be effective in all kinds of conditions. So he is your number one spinner in the long term. So I think he needs to be given as many opportunities as possible. So I think I definitely look.
Okay, so
Okay.
a follow-up question on that: who do you think is the best bowler to get Akshar Patel out? Because I think he's the clear thorn in Australia's flesh.
I would say Mitchell Stark when he's back
Yeah.
with the reverse swing back into the left-hander. I think you saw that in Pakistan series as well. We got Fahim Ashraf and a couple of other left-handers like Fawad Alam was his bunny in that series as well. So, and I think Pat
Yeah.
Cummins, if he starts using himself properly, I think Pat Cummins can do that as well. Akshar is very good against spin. I think the difference between Jadeja and Akshar is that Jadeja often plays with his pad in front of his bat. That makes him an LBW candidate against someone like Murphy who can slide the ball into the left-hander with that arm ball, which Lyon doesn't have. But against Akshar against spin, I think doesn't seem to have any flaws in his technique. Like with the height that he's got, he doesn't even need to dance down the track. He can just use his reach to smother the spin and just completely neutralize anything that any assistance that the bowler may get.
Okay, let's see how that really trickles through. And we have lots of questions coming through. Fantastic to see that in a Sunday afternoon. We'll take them right now as we speak. One in Kohli, one in Australia, and one in Jadeja. Before that, we'll have to plug in the Play the Odds video, which is a brand new feature on the cricket.com app. It really is fantastic. Here's what I mean. Shona, if you can play the clip. Okay, I'll play it myself. Check out cricket.com's brand new feature on our app called Play the Odds. Test your cricket knowledge by making predictions on match events. Not just that, come back to check the results and see your earnings. Maintain your streak by playing on consecutive featured match days. If you think you can, of course, beat this, check out the rulebook to be assured by the formalities of this game. Anyway, check out this feature and we'll be back to the show right now. Yep, that's available on the cricket.com app right now. So, of course, you can do that for the rest of the cricket games later this week. Nitin goes on to say, boys, should Ashwin have got the player of the match? So, good question. Who is the player of the match? Is it Jadeja purely because 7 for so, Nicks?
Yeah, Jadeja won it. Yeah, Jadeja won it. But it should have been Ashwin.
Should have been Ashwin. Nicks, you feel that? So,
they both had the same number of wickets until like last 4 wickets of the Australian innings, which Jadeja cleaned up, by which time the game was already over. Ashwin also scored more runs with the bat, and got the more important bat.
See, I think at times it's these man of the match awards end up becoming really unexplainable. But I think at this point of time, it's sort of fair to go with Jadeja just based on the overall numbers, match figures. But if you just want to talk about the best bowler in the game, it was Ashwin. I think Ashwin was clearly more difficult to play. He got the more important wickets. I mean, becoming the first bowler ever to dismiss Smith and Labuschagne in the same over. I mean, that itself, I mean, Ashwin can actually, in his big list of achievements, this will definitely be one of the bullet points.
There's another bullet point which I'd flash on the screen right now, which is the most man of the match awards for India in home tests, and that's Anil Kumble 9, Ravindra Jadeja 8, Tendulkar 8, and Kohli 7. So, of course, that just gives you a reflection of how good Ravindra Jadeja has been, especially at home. Let's take another one from Pranav Anand, and it is, of course, addressing the big man, who was very unlucky, by the way, in that first innings to get LBW, thanks to Nitin Menon. Pranav Anand goes on to say, also, is Kohli back? Or is it one of those master classes that he keeps producing out of nowhere in the past 3-4 years? In both the innings, he looked very comfortable unless Murphy came on in the second innings. By the way, this is the first time ever that Kohli's been stumped, and it's the first time ever Carey's been part of a stumping. So just on Kohli, Nicks, what is it with him? Are we getting glimpses of him going back to the best that he was?
Yeah, this was clearly one of his best knocks in the recent times in whites, even more so at home. We discussed about this also being his highest score versus Australia at home. Incidentally, the previous one was also at Delhi. So the Delhi boy has definitely come home. Now, whether he stays home or again goes away is something we'll only know after a lot of break. So I think the break might also be a good time for them to just reflect a bit on how they've gone about things. Kohli has looked in much better shape and at comfort as compared to the previous games, but it's about building on this now. I mean, you have got one innings today. Also, I felt very smart from Murphy to really just beat him in the air and just drifted wide of him and get him stumped. So, of course, there are good signs, but yeah, you'll want to see more of that.
Okay, fine, fair enough. Babu Rao goes on to say, read a stat that Jadeja has the best batting average and best bowling average as well since July 2017. So is he one of the best all-rounders that we've seen in the last 5 years of Test cricket? I know there's Ben Stokes, I know there's his compatriot Ravichandran Ashwin, but Jadeja really goes under the radar. Look at the innings that he's played, look at the oppositions he's taken on, and look at the stuff that he's turned out in terms of numbers.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best, definitely, but we can't. I mean, it'd be very hard on anyone, both Stokes and Ashwin, if we just said Jadeja is the best, because everyone have their strengths and weaknesses, and of course the conditions where they are more suited for. But again, I mean, Jadeja is one of a kind cricketer. I mean, just think about his contributions, the way he's improved as a batter. I mean, I always have a lot of time for sportsmen, sportspersons who find ways to solve some problems, include various include more elements to their game, like what Jadeja has done with his batting. So yeah, I mean, kudos to him.
Yeah, he's pretty top. And
And especially, I
also,
mean, coming back after such a big layoff and then just, like, I mean, it seems like he kahin gaya hi nahi tha.
exactly, like he took like a duck to water, especially after that 7-4, which gave him confidence in the Ranji Trophy, and then now a 7-4 in international cricket as well. I have one for Sanket before we ask you about certain Indian changes and then wrap up, boys. Sanket, this comes in the form of Narain123. He says opposition teams should stick to their strengths. Australia should play Stark. He is a better bet than other batsmen, and Stark can replace a frontline batsman like Ranshaw, and Green can come in place of other. What do you have to make of that, Sanket?
So is he saying that 5 bowlers like with Stark, Cummins, Koeman, Lyon, and Murphy? Like I don't think that would be a good idea. Firstly, I think Australia are already extremely thin on batting, and like none of them are like even remotely close to being number 7 batters. I think even number 8 is high for most of them. Maybe Mitchell Stark at a push is a number 8. Pat Cummins, I think these days is more of a number 10, not even a number 9, despite what he did in the first innings of this test. But his batting over the last couple of years, or I would say ever since the 2018 BGT, after that is batting like I think he's not even scored a single half century. So he's very much a
Yeah.
number 10, not even a number 9. Stark is probably a number 8 or 8.5 or something. So you cannot have one of them at 7, the other at 8, and then 3 number 11s. Although, again,
Okay.
as I said, I don't think it really matters like what 11 Australia play in this series. I would be astonished if it is anything other than a 4-0. But yeah, purely from a long term point of view, I don't see any benefits in that. Like, I think Australia have to, like, just because you don't have good enough batters doesn't mean that you just keep stacking the team with bowlers, because ultimately some of them are going to be underused. Like you've seen with India with Akshar Patel. Like Akshar Patel would be easily the third best spinner in the world after the two that are in his own team. But because they are in his team, he's not got a single, like he didn't get a single wicket in this test, which is quite extraordinary. Like I was like in the preview said, I said that Akshar would be the leading run scorer in the series, leading wicket taker in the series. Instead, he's the leading run scorer, but not the leading wicket taker. So yeah, I think. Yeah, that so I don't think there is any point in just stacking up bowlers for the sake of it. So I think Stark should come in for one of the bowlers, and then if the batters are not performing, then ultimately you have to find new batters to replace them, not just play more bowlers for the sake of it.
Okay, fine, cool.
Just
Guys, last couple of questions then. And Nix, I'll ask you this because we're really running out of time because I really appreciate all the comments flying through. So Babura and Sachin Upadhyay have pretty much similar questions. Babura first goes on to say the squad will be announced for the last 2 tests today. What do you think the changes they will make? That's the Indian squad, that is. And Sachin Upadhyay as well. Similar lines. Changes for India next match, boys. I would back KL for the last 2 matches. Last chance for him for sure. If he fails again, he's done in for red ball. Gill and Kishan are waiting for replacement. Thoughts? Next first and then so.
yeah, I think it should remain the same. I don't see changes happening there. Uh, I just wanted to throw one question to Sanket that don't you think the
Sure.
difference between the two sides is just being the middle order batting of not the middle order batting, the all rounders, because Australia had India in trouble in almost all innings for the top order. Apart from Rohit, none of the other have inspired much confidence. Yes, Rohit did get Kohli did get one score, but it's the all rounders who've made the difference for India with the bat as well. So I think the series may say 2-0 for now, but I don't think it's as clear. And had it not been for Aksar's runs in the first game, and also the partnership that Ashwin and Aksar had in yesterday, I think that has been the biggest difference as opposed to the batters batting better.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
but I
Okay.
don't think that like that's been the case for India for like I think a couple of years now. These
Yeah,
batters,
yeah,
I don't think you can really say that they are tail end runs. They are expected to score
no,
these
of
runs.
course.
Like Jadeja, Ashwin, and Akshar, they've been scoring consistently. So I think you have got to consider them as batters now. Like after given the consistency that they've shown. So I think it doesn't really matter. India bat till number 9, and Australia have got 3
Yeah.
batters. I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. What about the changes then, boys? Like we just alerted you guys earlier. What can India do in terms of squad changes as well? So,
I mean, I think Nikhil already touched upon it. I don't see any squad changes, and I don't see any need for any squad changes. The one change that they had to do was done. Iyer deservingly got the chance as soon as he was fit. About KL Rahul, I mean, even I'm unsure of what should be done because I mean, at this point of time, I mean, dropping him for someone else would once again take me back to the point that I made about India's 11 for the WTC final, because that's the next event. This series is already done in my head. So, I mean, looking at that, I think KL Rahul should be communicated that you have 3 tests, 2 in this series and the WTC final. But yeah, I mean, if he fails in all 3, I think I mean, India should move on from him as a test player for good. It should not be the case that if there are 2 more injuries, then he just comes back because he's played test cricket in the past.
Okay, let's see how that really motors on in terms of fascinating subplots when we talk about Indian cricket, guys. In the BGT, well, like I said, India too good and 2-0 up, and they all, of course, now look at Indore for that 3rd test. We'll be there in terms of reviewing it with familiar faces like Som, Nix, and Sanket. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Really, really appreciate it on this curtailed Sunday, but makes more sense to have a good Sunday with India winning. Som, Nix, and Sanket, thank you so much for your time. We'll leave it there. Subscribe for all you guys watching. We've discussed a range of topics, so feel free to rewind, watch the video again, share it as much as possible. And for all you 41, 39 people, thanks so much. It's time to say goodbye on this Day 3 review. Lots of content coming up. We've done an exclusive interview with Ausralia about Ravindra Jadeja as well. That's fascinating to check out because he talks about all the things that you want to know about Jadeja off the field, his mentality, certain stories, insights, and it's just brilliant. So check that out. It's available on the YouTube platform right now in terms of the cricket.com/TV and YouTube. And have a great Sunday because trust me, it's going to be a fantastic week of cricket again, and we'll be here to bring it for you. It's a good afternoon.